If you're a recruit or the parent of a recruit, you know that reaching out to college coaches is one of the most important steps in the process. But figuring out what to say to break the ice, that trips a lot of people up. And that's why I've partnered with Athlete Narrative. Athlete Narrative designed the Recruiter app to help athletes send clear, concise, and personalized emails to college coaches. Here's how it works. You start by filling out your radar page. Think of this as your digital resume. It's going to have your personal info, accolades, interests, and links to your game film. Then you use the Recruiter app to search for schools that match your interests. Once you find some schools, simply tap on a coach's name and the app will pull from your radar page to generate the perfect introductory email. All you have to do is personalize it with some quick info about why that specific school caught your attention. Then you hit send. The message goes straight from your inbox to theirs, and it's that simple. You do not need to pay thousands of dollars for an email service that might not even get results. For the same price as a month of Netflix, you can start sending emails that actually help you stand out. The recruiting process always rewards athletes who take initiative. Athlete Narrative helps you take that initiative faster. Download the app today using the link in this podcast description. Greetings, information superhighway. Welcome to another episode of the Nail the Recruiting Process podcast. I'm your host, Jared Zeidman. I'm really excited about what's coming your way today. And I would say a theme for today is assessment. And before we talk to our guest, who's going to run through a lot of assessment with me personally, I'm looking for some assessment from you, information superhighway. More specifically, I'm looking for a little bit of help with two things. I'm going to run through them really quick. I'll start by saying I've always been big on small victories. Even thinking back to last week's episode with Coach Kristen Tulo, we talked about celebrating small things and really getting excited for small victories. So a small victory that I'm really excited for is that I started this podcast last August, and in reviewing my most recent stats, already have more than 2,000 unique listeners. That is really awesome to me. And I'm really, really humbled by how many people have checked it out between some of my social media followers on Instagram and some people that just kind of picked it up randomly searching through college basketball and recruiting podcasts. That's really cool to know that more than 2,000 unique people have listened to your pet project that is, still relatively new. But I want to flip it to assess something. I have been putting the podcasts up on YouTube because I have video of the podcast anyway, so I can make social media content to both help promote that and to promote my business. But it's really, really weird when 2,000 unique people will listen to a podcast version of it, but then you average less than 10 YouTube viewers. That might just be how this works. I have no idea. But if there is someone out there that understands what button to push when you upload things to YouTube that I'm not pushing because I'm old and out of touch, please contact me. I would love to know what I'm doing wrong. I want to continue growing, and that assessment is helpful. Similarly, I have gotten some requests to take some content in a different direction, and I'm looking for help from somebody that's more technologically inclined than me. If you can visualize what I'm doing right now, and if you're looking at this, you just see a picture of me. I want you to imagine a 9x16, so like a TikTok reel or an Instagram reel, where the top half of it is just me talking to you, but the bottom half of it is a live basketball play that I can walk you through what the player is doing right, what the player is doing wrong, or if that's a specific thing or technique that can help you stand out in the recruiting process. So for example, if you want to be a wing at the next level, I'd love to show what wings do consistently in transition, how well they have to consistently move off the ball, how they use screens, et cetera, et cetera. I know this is possible because I literally watch people do like Twitch streams where they game live, or watch along parties where they're watching something live and then also, talking to people in a chat. So I know this technology exists, but so far my AI searches, my ChatGPT searches, and my Google searches of like how to do this myself have not been fruitful. So if you can tell by the gray in my beard and my horribly receding hairline, which I've, taken some liberties with and just done away with myself, I have no idea what I'm doing technologically. I'm using a lot of technology that I pay for because it helps me with shortcuts, and I don't have a lot of time to work with anyway, given the COVID stuff. So if you have any idea what I'm talking about, please reach out to me so that I can create better and more informative content for our listeners. On the subject of better and more informative content, I want to set the table for an awesome guest with some really impactful discussion points today. If you have followed along with me through my Nail the Recruiting Process journey from Jump Street, the ethos of what I do is to try to keep recruits and their families from comparing during the process, because what we see on social media the most, what we see on television the most, is for what most people would be a daydream sequence. Not everybody's recruiting process is going to be, Cooper Flagg's Duke recruiting process. Not everybody's recruiting process is going to be AZ Fudd to UConn or Juju Watkins to USC. Most people are going to have to do a lot of the dirty work themselves and learn how to get noticed. And that's the path that I decided to take, because in my gut, I was like, if you're one of the top 50 basketball players in the country, you're not going to need my help. Maybe in the modern NIL era, you'll need an agent to negotiate some stuff, but you don't really need help getting noticed, because the way our profession works is we're going to find you. If you're at the very top, we're going to find you. So I have really been targeting the everyone else, which is fine. By the way, there's nothing wrong with that. I love targeting the everyone else because I think those are the people that are most in need of what recruiting actually looks like and what college coaches are actually looking for. But it does leave one specific component of my work pretty much untouched, which is, what does the very top of this actually look like? And that's where my guest today comes in. Jon Soch is the owner and I think sole employee of Suited Scouting. He runs one of the go-to scouting services for the top level of men's college basketball and professional basketball. He has earned his reputation as an exceptional scout that can ID the future ceilings of talent, and he has great relationships all across the basketball community. Now, he does not have the coaching experience that I do, but that doesn't change the fact that he worked his tail off as both a player and a young exec, and he knows his stuff. So what I essentially wanted to do was I wanted to assess, what does it really look like talking shop about what this process can be for everyone else versus what this process can be for the very top. So this is informative, not just potentially for our listeners, but for me personally. And I know I mentioned something briefly on my social media accounts last night, but I'm going to say it again here. You might not love everything that Jon has to say about the future of NIL, about how much work actually goes into being at that very top level, about the prep school route and why college coaches are so much more reliant on the prep school route. But just because you might not like what he's saying doesn't mean what he's saying is not true. And if we're judging by the immediate response that I got from the coaching community to the first little snippet of this podcast that I posted on social media on Monday, he's really on to a lot of stuff, especially on the men's side. This is a lot of knowledge from someone that is deeply in touch with the new wave of collegiate recruiting in the NIL and portal era. And I do believe that even though we are talking about the very top, it will trickle down. And spoiler alert, some of my future interviews coming up after this are going to be with people that are experiencing that trickle down effect. But for now, to really give you, in my opinion, the most accurate insight of the current landscape from a recruiting advocate's perspective, not from a current college coach's perspective, I'm really excited to introduce to you the scout in the suit, Jon Soch. Let's dive in. Now, John, you're identified as the scout in the suit, and I had wondered if you were going to be wearing a suit for this interview. And I told myself, if you weren't wearing a suit, I would be like, do I get a free pizza? Like, is the pizza free if you're not wearing a suit?
Indeed it is. Indeed, the pizza is free if I'm not wearing a suit. Doesn't matter where I am. I've been every gym in America. It doesn't matter how hot, how cold. I'm in the suit. I remember, 100 degrees in Las Vegas. I walked to Summer League in the full suit. I have suits without liners just in case of that. I got suits with double liners for if I'm walking through a snowstorm. I'm ready.
I love it. Stay ready. And I mean, it's good to have already built that threshold because, the summer circuit's right around the corner.
Oh, yeah.
I am thrilled to have you here as early in the season as you're going to be for one reason and one reason specifically. Things look a little chaotic right now. There's a record number of both male and female scholarship level athletes in the transfer portal, which is kicking down to being a record low of high school athletes getting recruited. And I think everybody wants more clear and concise information. I spent my last really close to 14 years on the women's side, having someone that specializes on the men's side. And as we just discussed off air, doesn't mean you have anything against or won't help female athletes, but your area of expertise happens to be the current men's game. I think it's going to be great to bounce some things off one another. So if you're ready, I want to kind of dive in a bit to your background.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm a basketball scout working for NBA and men's college basketball teams. I've been around basketball since I was a teenager, playing semi-seriously from the time I was 12. I repeated my grade 11 year. Well, I was born in Montreal, raised in Montreal. Then I repeated my grade 11 year at the Tilton School in Tilton, New Hampshire. Then did grade 12 at IMG Academy. Following that, I was recruited to Brandeis University. Unfortunately, I had some injuries, some health stuff, and never really got the opportunity to play. It's just the luck of the draw. From there, I started my own podcast during COVID, did twice a week for about a year, then came back to school, tried to figure it out, and wound up getting some really good breaks. And now I run the largest basketball recruiting newsletter in America. In fact, we just got our 600th subscriber this week. And I run a premium scouting service for NCAA and NBA teams that want that kind of info you can't just put out there. You need to make sure it's that premium level info.
And you also have a specialty that maybe you don't take this seriously, but I think it's really interesting, especially being from Buffalo and leveraging this pipeline a lot in my recruiting time. You have a very unique level of access to Canadian athletes where prep and high school ball is a gigantic deal. And I want to make sure I have this right. You have actually been a part of the committee that selects all Canadian athletes. Is that correct?
Indeed, I have. I've been a member of the All Canadian Selection Committee for the last 3 years. Yeah, 3 years. Now sponsored by Quench, which it was an awesome game this year. All the merch was really well done. Big shout out to my guy Shane Sterling. He did a great job with the creative directive for all that stuff. And I love the way that it showcases the top Canadian athletes. It's great. Yeah, where do you want to take this? I don't want to start jumping in. Where do you want to start going?
I love this. We're on an adventure because you just listen. Every time you speak 2 sentences, I'm going to be interested in asking you like 5 follow-up questions, John. But there's 3 specific things in your background that I want to unpack, and we're going to do it one piece at a time, as long as you're cool with it.
Let's do it.
So, just to give the American audience a bit more of a background, you're from a province of Canada that handles high school very differently. And
yes,
that prompted me to immediately want to ask you, with some of your work with Canadian athletes, are there kind of more unique challenges that you feel face some Canadian athletes that want to pursue high-level competitive basketball that maybe don't exist for American athletes? And I'd love you to walk maybe our inexperienced listeners through what that could look like.
Awesome. So the first thing that just stands out to me the most about, how about this? The part that can't change, the biggest problem that cannot change for Canadian athletes versus American athletes is that there is no local Division I schools. Mm-hmm. So your recruitment just starts off later. That's how it works. Most players' first offer comes from a school within an hour of where they live or where they go to school. Someone who can just go watch them on a random Tuesday where, hey, I want to get out of the house. I'm a college coach. I want to get out of the house. I want to try to advance my career. You know what? I'm going to go watch this young kid who is probably too young for him to even potentially be a recruit. But you know what? I'm going to go check him out. I'm going to see what I can figure out about him. I'll write a report. Maybe we'll offer him. Who knows? You don't get that in Canada because no one can just drive up on a Tuesday. It's not a thing. Buffalo, because of that's the big advantage that Fort Erie has, the new prep school on right on the border because they're so close to Buffalo. But even just going Buffalo to Toronto, hour and a half.
You just named Fort Erie, and it's so funny you did. So to give you an idea of the advantage Buffalo has, I've done it. Door to door, Fort Erie and back. The entirety of the drive is less than an hour.
Yeah. And that's the only school in all of Canada that has any Division I schools nearby. And that is one Division I school who, by the way, recruited multiple of their players. Isaac Jack started there. Braden Jackson started there. And I feel like I might be forgetting somebody. But they have at least 2 players from Fort Erie in 3 years of Fort Erie existing. Kind of crazy.
So how do you try to work with athletes around that problem? Because if you and I know anything about the work that we do with trying to help recruits navigate this, it's the panic. No matter how many times we tell a junior that it's okay, spring of your junior year is really when this happens, that still won't change the level of panic that the kid and the family has freshman year, sophomore year. How do you address that, giving that built-in challenge with Canadians?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Like that is such... because it really does just hold them back. It starts their recruitment later. There's a few things that I'll do. For one, especially if they're looking at just going to some random Canadian prep school, I always say, hey, let's find you a really good American prep school. Now, we can get into the whole discussion of, is it better to go to a worse Canadian prep school than let's call them pop-up prep in Canada versus a pop-up prep in America? I actually do think there's an advantage in that, but that's a huge discussion that I don't want to touch on because pop-up preps are just messy. But in terms of going to a real prep school, if you can go to a real prep school in America, there's a huge recruitment advantage in that, for one. But for two, you
went to one. You referencing Tilton, which we're going to revisit. We'll talk about that. I appreciate you tabling it for a moment.
I went to 2 prep schools actually. I'm very blessed and very lucky to have had that opportunity. But so for one, if you can get to a real prep school, you're just going to get seen by more coaches. You're going to get more recruitment. Your recruitment's going to start earlier. It's easy as that. The other end of it is just be patient. It comes. It will come. It might take a long time. It might take longer than it's supposed to. That's okay. But if you work hard, you stay calm, you do the right things, and most importantly, stay on top of your classes. Like already Canadian transcripts are tougher to deal with because you're going from a foreign country. Stay on top of your classes. Don't leave it to be like, we have to go to the clearinghouse to make sure if you're going to be a No, just get straight B pluses. Get B pluses at least. I'd rather you get A's, but I can live with B pluses so that we don't have to worry about if you're a qualifier. We don't have to worry if your credits will transfer. Take that issue off the table right away with that. Then we're going to talk about, hey, let's start reaching out to schools. You're at a prep school that's had players get recruited to these schools. Let's talk to those schools. Say you're from Gatineau. There's an assistant coach from Gatineau at a Division I school. Let's reach out to him. You're from Montreal. Let's find the Division I assistants from Montreal or who have a Montreal background. Do we have anyone else? Is there anything else about you that we can find? We've got someone else. Is there anything about you that we can find as a connection to a random college coach? Something to make you stand out ahead of them. Or even if it's, hey, your family loved going to Buffalo basketball games when you were growing up. That's that's honestly one of my favorite ones. You're from a basketball family. Your dad used to take you to all these games. Your dad, remember when I was growing up, I was lucky. We did a trip down to Michigan and we watched the Michigan Wolverines play. It was the most amazing experience ever. Now, I wouldn't recommend trying to use this trick on Michigan because they are an amazing school. But if it's, if it's a low to mid,
or a lower mid major than a power 4, you're saying?
Yeah, power 4 with a top 10, top 20 budget. Yeah, let's start with somewhere in the mid. Let's start with a low major to a mid major. How about you go to a Vermont game? You go to Vermont games your entire life. Once a year, you go to a Vermont game with your dad. You want to reach out to the Vermont staff, say, hey, I grew up going to all the Vermont games. That's a great connection that you can leverage. That look, it's not going to help you get recruited if you stink, but it might be the piece that gets these coaches to look at your film a little bit extra. It might be what gets these coaches to say, hey, it's more likely this kid fits. He knows what we're about. He's seen us play. He's seen who we are. He knows what Vermont is. Let's check him out a little extra. And so for me, I try to find those connections because I think they get you extra time of day with coaches in their brain.
So picking up on that connection standpoint, if I'm just looking at your experience with IMG objectively, and for our listeners that don't know, IMG, high school in Florida, specializes in developing high-level athletes, not just in basketball, across the spectrum of sports. To me, in my experience coaching, the value of a high school like IMG is they have a more built-in network because of the reputation of IMG that precedes it. Mm-hmm. The flip, and this is what I really want to pick your brain about, is, of course, you know that information, so every kid wants to play at IMG. I do not think the average kid, very similar to the average kid saying, yeah, I can be a D1 athlete, I don't think the average kid is actually prepared for what the athletic experience at a high school like that looks like. I would love it if you were open to doing so, Jon, if you could walk me through, like, what was it actually like to be a basketball player at IMG? Obviously, it prepared you for college, but, is that experience for everybody?
I'm trying to think of the best way to take this. Look, so when I showed up at IMG, I did 2 summer camps at IMG before I wound up going there. Very lucky, Very lucky for that. Now, to be quite frank, getting to IMG is the easy part. There's something called money, and you can exchange that for goods and services. And look, basketball's still a business. If you want to pay, you can get on IMG. IMG's got great revenue. They got a ton of school students in. That's how they have these crazy facilities with all these coaches and all these people. Money exchange for goods and services. But to go to somewhere of that high level and stand out, that's the tough part. That's the part that a lot of players really struggle with. You might be good, but when you look at their top team is incredible. Darius Acuff is a top 10 player in the country, and people think he's underrated. He's like number 6 or 7 in the country, and people argue he's underrated. You're not even just dealing with players that work hard anymore. You're dealing with players that are top 1% physical athletes that also work incredibly hard. The difference between the best player, like a Darius Acuff, versus, I don't know, someone who's not doing as well on that team, is how hard Darius works. I got to watch Kareem Stagg work out because I was down there for a showcase, and Coach Sean McAloon's one of my guys. He was there when I was there, so I'm still tight with him. He's a great guy. I got to speak to him, and while I was speaking to him, they were just working out Kareem, and I'm watching him just, for one, this young man is built like a Mack truck. He's like 6'9", 260. I need his chest day. I'm like, what are you? How are you? It was very impressive watching him get up there. He's flying up for big dunks. Looked like I would never want to meet that man in the post ever. And so I'm just talking to Coach Sean about that. I'm watching how hard Kareem works out, and I know how hard someone like Darius works out. I'll tell a story. When I got really lucky with the first prep school I went to, Tilton School in New Hampshire. It wasn't a great fit for me off the court, which I think a lot of people really underrate when looking at their college and prep school. That's something we could talk about a little more later. But one of the big advantages I got on the court was I got to work out with a guy named Marcus Sikorowski. You might remember the name. He played at Creighton for 3 years, was Big East all-freshman, Big East second team, then Big East first team. After that, he got drafted to the NBA, 49th overall to the Brooklyn Nets. And he did all of this as about a just barely 6 foot tall guard. He was the hardest worker I've ever seen in my life, bar none. And I've shared the court with at least 3 multi-contract NBA players and a bunch of G League guys and a bunch of fringe guys and a bunch of pros at various levels. No one worked as hard as Marcus. So when I showed up in my first at Tilton, I thought I was a hard worker. And then I saw Marcus work, and I understood that okay, they say, oh, NBA players work out 4 hours a day or something like that, just on the court, just basketball, no warm up, no cool down, 4 hours of work. And I was able to do that. That was easy. But then I watched Marcus work out and I understood there was a different level to it. Yeah,
The
you can
level
put
of
in the
intent
hours.
and focus, sure.
You have to work out at such a high level to be good enough. There's just a level of hard work that the average person doesn't understand that they can do, that a lot of these absolute top players are able to get to. And that's how you get the most from an experience like IMG, from an experience like Tilton. That's, if you're someone that can work that hard, it makes more sense to go to a real prep school somewhere where you have full access to a gym, full access to nutrition, full access to a weight room, because you're going to get so much more out of those experiences. It's why I'm such a big believer in the NEPSAC. It's why I'm such a big believer in IMG. It's why I'm such a big believer in a lot of these real prep schools.
So this is an interesting thing. I want to bring up a data point. This is from my research. Now, my research, I think, is a little bit more skewed to the women's side than the men's side. But I asked how important it was to the college coaches that the kid played for a prestigious high school team. And I'm very familiar with the NEPSAC, coaching most of my life in the Northeast. So let's use the NEPSAC as a target. I sort of assumed that all of the college coaches on the men's and women's side were going to be like, yeah, this is a 10 out of 10. I want these kids to be prepared. What I was sort of shocked by in my research and then in my follow-up conversations with coaches were their statement is, if that's what prepares them, then good, then that's what they need. We just want the kids prepared. How they get prepared, it was not as important to us. And I was really surprised by how low their preference of high school was. So my question for you, kind of with that piece of information in mind, is, would you say, based on your interactions with men's coaches, that you feel like it's the same, where by any means necessary, however you get yourself ready for college sports, that's what we care about? Or do you really feel like a lot of these scouts at mid-major, high mid-major, and beyond are really scoping out what the prep scene looks like first and foremost?
So the first thing I want to say is I want to reference a great quote by Henry Ford, the founder of the Ford Motor Company. He said, if I asked people what they wanted, then they would have asked me to make a faster horse. And the point of that is,
I like that
people
one.
don't know what they want. People don't know what they want. And I think there's, they say like, oh, I don't really care what school they go to. They do. They do. I've had enough players. I've worked beside enough players that go to the absolute worst high schools. You know who gets recruited? The kid that goes to Blair, the kid that goes to Worcester, the kid that goes to Newman, the kid that goes to Perkiomen, the kid that goes to the nice NEPSAC. They do. Again and again. Again and again. When you're 50-50 on a kid, and you've got a kid when you're 50-50 on a player, and you've got one player who's got all the nice background, has all the right coaches vouching for him, and you've got someone like Coach Joe Mantegna. I really wish I could pronounce his name better. My Italian needs some work.
You know what's funny? I had a player assistant on my podcast last season, so I'm with you.
Yeah, you've got someone like that vouching for a player. You take the player, and if you need proof of it, go look at Eric Ihikwaba on American, who had very little recruitment, and they were telling everyone, no, Eric's good, and he was amazing for American. Helped them make the NCAA tournament. There's a reason why you go with the kids that are on these prep schools, and you do. Now, look, everyone wants to say that they don't. Everyone, in the end of the day, yes, it is whoever's prepared. It is about who's prepared. But when 99% of the players that are more prepared are also the ones that go to these schools, you look at the Venn diagram, there's a huge amount of overlap. You can say, I only want the players that are prepared, and you'll recruit anyone who's prepared, but most of those players happen to be at these schools already.
There's a huge component of what you just said that sort of stands out to me as networking, which is one of the things that you talked about earlier on in the interview. Is there some credence to, when you get to one of these more elite prep programs, if you're able to, have the talent to sustain a roster spot on those prep programs, that you're just automatically in with people where their word is taken more seriously by college coaches? That's kind of what I'm hearing from you?
Yeah. I mean, I want to be careful with how I phrase this.
Yeah.
The way I would put it is you go to a really high level, like when I say like a real prep school, I mean somewhere where they own the campus, they own the gym, they own the dorms. You've got a cafeteria that feeds you. This isn't, okay, all right, everyone, we bought 15 chicken breasts for dinner. Everyone line up. We're cooking 15 chicken
Right, we're
breasts.
not talking about what the Americans would call, or 60 Minutes would call, the basketball factory. We're talking about real established schools with proper mentors.
Exactly. There better be AP classes. Classes are in person, all that. You go to somewhere like that, even if it's not necessary, like one, you're buying the coaches network, but two, you're buying all the evaluators network. When you go to a better school, you get seen by more people. Recruitment isn't made, it's stolen. Recruitment isn't made, it's stolen. You need to play against other people that are getting recruited to steal their recruitment. Steal. Multiply.
I actually
you
like
take it
that
and
phrase.
You double it.
We play defense in our sport. I like so actually, as you just said that sentence, I like Sylvester looking at Tweety and seeing dollar signs in his eyes. I was like, that's a real what you just said.
Yeah.
I would agree completely. How many times do we see a kid who's under the radar and they go just get in a heralded recruit's jock for 40 minutes? Just, I'm not letting you score and I'm going to dominate you. And all of a sudden, the coach on the sideline is like, well, I'm supposed to be watching this kid, but ooh.
Yeah,
that's a thing. I agree with you completely.
It's the only way. It's basically 95% at least of recruitment is, I watched this one player beat up on a player that I was recruiting. I watched this one player beat up on a player that Creighton was recruiting. That's how Marcus got his offer. Marcus Zagorowski, who I referenced earlier, got his Creighton offer because he beat up on a Creighton recruit. He had like 30 or something in an OT win, if I'm remembering right. Or he had a game winner at the end of regulation. I don't know. It's been quite a few years. I'm sorry, my photographic memory isn't on point. But you need to beat the recruits to get the recruitment. You can go average 50, but if you don't play anyone that's getting recruited Division 1, you're probably not going to get recruited Division 1. Now, if you're averaging 50, maybe. Like, I'll be honest. Maybe something will come. But you still, that's the 5%. For 95% of recruitment, you need to go into a gym with other people that are getting recruited and steal that recruitment. You need coaches that are watching one player to also watch you and say, we want to recruit him too. We want to recruit him instead. We want to recruit him and the other guy. Maybe we want them as a package. Who knows? But
I think that's extremely valid, and something that I've talked to a lot of coaches about that really resonates with me as you share this is when you are on the recruiting trail as a high school athlete, there's really 3 or 4 different things that we can succinctly evaluate aside from the way you play, right? We can evaluate your inner circle, your mentors, your family. We can evaluate your attitude and like how we project your level of resilience. And then let's say you have a bad game, we can still evaluate your motor, right? When you have a good game, I think the thing that a lot of kids don't realize is the very first question we ask, because we're all cynical, is, well, who are they playing against? And I think that is what you're talking about. If you don't bring it against the best competition, you can look at it and be like, yeah, well, I mean, they were really good. I was kind of mentally rattled. Well, my response to that would be like, yeah, but when you get to college, everyone is really good. That's sort of the deal. So I think,
and not only are they really good, they're much older than you. They're so much.
They're adults.
Because it's usually these 17-year-olds that are saying it. You don't hear it a lot from the 19-year-old postgrads that are like, oh, I wasn't ready. It's always the 17-year-olds that are like, man, they were so big and physical and tough. I wasn't ready for it. Yeah, what's going to happen when you play a 24-year-old? Like,
that comment, John, that comment to me is an awesome place to segue into talking about the portal. Because I have tried to explain this, and, a huge introduction for me to my new clients has been, I've been talking to a lot of AAU programs that I used to recruit from, right? And I talk to their teams and I'm like, listen, I want to tell you what I'm looking for when I recruit you, right? And not a lot of coaches can be as raw and as detailed as I'm being because they have to worry about the school that's on the front of their logo. I can tell you everything. And the first thing that I'm going to tell you is that right now, the thing that you don't have is experience playing college basketball. And it's advanced, and it's probably going to shock you upon arrival. And because of that, college coaches are reaching into the portal. and grabbing kids that already get it and already have the experience. So my first question for you is, I feel like the men's side has been a little bit ahead of the women's side. The portal was much more prevalent, much earlier on the men's side. How does it look right now? And do you think that trend is on brand? I've already heard some high major men's coaches being like, we're not even talking to high school kids right now. What does that look like to you?
I think that a lot of coaches are still haven't figured it out.
Okay.
And now that we're getting some stuff about how Florida won their national championship, there's a little more info going out. And when you hear it, this is, I love the Florida program. I know pretty much everyone there. They're great people. I was a huge I'm still trying to find my tweet where I call Thomas Ha top 50 recruit back in high school. They're great. They're great people, top to bottom there. They use analytics. They went in there. They found the players that analytically stood out. They brought them in, players that had the right mental makeup, toughness. Thomas Ha was uber tough, uber skilled, would play in a role, would play out of a role, would do whatever you needed. And it's like, yeah, this is the kind of kid I want on my team. And now guess what? He's a national champion. And if he doesn't get a first round pick, if no one will give him a first round promise, then I'm going to be yelling at a few NBA teams to give him a first round promise. That kid's, he's more than good enough. A lot of times people are still just throwing NIL out there. They don't know what they're supposed to be. What they haven't figured out, okay, these are the positions we should be gambling on. These aren't the positions we should be gambling on. A lot of stuff like that, coaches are still figuring out.
Sure.
But it's a lot safer to just go all portal. It is. You're just more likely to get people that, one, have lost their ego. When you're on your third school in like 4 years, because your first school didn't work out, your second school went pretty well, and now you're looking for that third school. You've been beat down. You understand how good you are. You understand how good other players are. You know what it takes to win. You got 2 years left. You want to make a little bit of money. You want to look really good. You want to prepare yourself for a pro career or just for your future. Honestly, I think there's a whole other interesting discussion to be had there of now there is so much more money in NIL than pro, where it makes more sense to just maximize NIL money and then get a real job after. But that's a whole other discussion. But for a lot of these kids, they understand it. Whereas you bring in a high schooler, they don't. They don't understand how to win. They still have an ego. They still get mad when they're not hitting shots. And it's like, dude, I don't care if you shoot over 10 one game. I need you shooting your open threes. If you are open in the corner and you don't shoot it, we're in more trouble than if you do.
We passed up our best shot of the possession because you were on one.
Because you're scared. Because you feel bad. And you know what? If you're scared, I'm going to pull you in. I'm not going to play you. And now you're going to cry and I'm going to lose you for the rest of the year. And you're done. Why would you recruit freshmen when that is the downside of it? And that also all goes back to the point we made earlier about the value of going to a real prep school. You go to a school like in the NEPSAC, you're getting coached by someone who could be a Division I assistant.
Right, they get
pretty much right. Every head coach of a good NEPSAC school either was or could be a Division I assistant in the next 3 to 5 years.
It's much like the way you and I would talk about D3 based on our experience. I'm a literal former D3 acting associate head coach that became a first assistant at the D1 level. I did that. So and I think you always want to surround yourself with people that have that level of perspective and experience.
Yeah. And it's that level of perspective and experience, that level of drive, but also just that talent. You have to be good at your job to be a D1 assistant. It's not that easy. It's not easy to be a D1 assistant. It's not easy to be someone who gets to these high levels of coaching. Learn from them. And that's one of the big things that a lot of players can get is learning from these coaches. Why are we gambling only on freshmen that went to prep schools? Because they got real coaching, because they are ready. When you take someone who's been running the Princeton offense all year and knows 8 different variations on it and all the different ways to score on it, and they know 3 different defensive packages, they're going to show up and be ready to go. I could talk about a player, I'm going to talk about a player named Kurt Tang who got recruited to Michigan State to play for Tom Izzo. And one of the things that when I was talking with the Michigan State coaches about Kerr and why they were recruiting him is because his team ran floppy. His high school team and his AAU team run a ton of floppy, and they run a ton of floppy. Oh yeah, he's running the same sets we
when I'm
see.
curling
We don't
the
have to think
baseline,
about it.
I don't have to reteach you your reads as you're curling off a screen coming on the baseline. Right.
You've been running this for years. Kerr, you've been running this for 4 or 5 years. You know floppy like the back of your head. You probably know floppy better than some of the seniors on this team. Yeah, we're going to recruit you, and you're going to figure it out, and you're going to be really good here one day.
It's fit. It's fit. So this is really, really interesting to me, John. Because what I'm hearing is we can reach for experience and we can reach for people that we think are going to be the correct fit. And right now, we're having an easier time finding that in the portal.
Yeah.
On the flip, we have, and I guess, it's almost like Brett Favre. Brett Favre, set a lot of NFL records, but he also set a lot of NFL records for futility because he just threw the ball the most. So right now, because we have so many kids in the portal, we're also seeing some big problems. The biggest problem I'm seeing is what I would call transferring to the portal. People impulsively get in the portal. They don't really have a network. They don't have good mentors. They don't have a plan, and then they're stuck. What's going wrong in your estimation that's getting them stuck, and how do we unstuck them, for lack of a better way of putting it?
Sorry, awfully timed cough right there.
No, you're fine.
My biggest issue with a lot of these portal players is they don't have a plan. Now, some players just don't get a plan. They walk into coach's office for the end of season meeting. Coach looks at them and says, "You're gone," and they got to figure it out. There's a lot of players that don't get the luxury of having a plan. But on the flip side, there's a lot of players that have the luxury of building a plan. They have the luxury of figuring it out. They have mentors. They have people they can speak to. They've got a network. They got people who love them, and they got people like me that know what's going on. People like you that know what's going on, that they can come and just be like, "Hey, tell me how it is."
Right.
You need to make a plan. Sending out your film is not a plan. Okay? The amount of players that are sending out their film and getting recruited from the portal is it's not a lot. It's not a lot. Now, sometimes for transfer downs it is. Like you're going down, you're going from a D1 to a D2 to a D3 or a D3 or a JUCO or an NAI. Yeah. Okay, they'll go through your film. But you're a Division 1 player trying to stay at the Division 1 level. I don't know a lot of coaches that are. How about this? I don't have any coaches this year that have told me that they've started recruiting a player because the player sent them film.
Because they just jumped out. And yeah, right.
Yeah. Like, oh yeah, this is some great practice film you've got here. Wow, thank you for sending it to me. Like it's just hard to evaluate. It's almost impossible to evaluate practice film. I was on the phone with a coach this year and he's like, I got this kid's practice film. I was like, wow, this kid might be too good for us to take. He's so good. And then guess what? He went to another school. Didn't go to their school, and he was awful. He couldn't play. He played less than half the season because he couldn't get minutes. They were like, "You are killing us. You're not good, but you look great in practice." You can't evaluate practice film.
You said something really important to me, and I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to promise you that no matter how hard you try, you can't hurt my feelings. I'm a big, strong boy. Okay, John?
Proud of you.
Okay, thank you. Hearing that in advance really makes me even more courageous. So I want you to evaluate my plan. You said you need to have a plan. I'm going to tell you how I have been advising some of my transfers who reached out to me before they got in the portal. No, because I think that's
number one. You need to start by reaching out before the portal. Oh my goodness, I cannot say it enough. What are you doing waiting until you're in the portal to start talking to people? Talk to someone before so that they can get some sort of idea of what's going on.
Okay, this is fantastic. Okay, so you already like part one of my plan. I feel even more secure now, John. This is great. All right, so part one, you've reached out to somebody in advance. Part two, you have assessed what your market will be. You've gotten an objective eval of your game. Part three, you've made targeted outreach to those schools explaining a couple really key things. Why you're in the portal, why you think you're going to be a good fit, and not looking to immediately just be like, offer me, please. But I want to set up a conversation with your coaching staff so that I can, get a sense of whether or not we'll be the right fit. Then, after you start talking to coaches, you can funnel it the way you would in a traditional recruiting process. Assess that. How do you feel about what I just laid out for you?
The first question I'm going to ask is, are you transferring up or transferring down?
So the reason I didn't share that is because I think the objective person that is giving you your assessment is going to help you make that decision. I'm facilitating both right now.
I'm going to say that for a transfer down, that is 100% the way you do it. Transfer down, that is no exception. I think that's the right way to do it. You understand, you have an objective evaluation, you understand what you've got going on. You have someone else who can sit there and tell you, and you trust them to be honest. Hey man, you don't have the resume to stay D1. Hey, you don't have the resume to stay D2. Hey, you're going to have to go to a JUCO, probably a JUCO in this region. Hey, you're probably going to have to go to an NAIA. Hey, you're probably going to have to go back home. Go to a D3 at home, or do an NAIA at home. Whatever it is. Hey, you need to figure this out. But I'm with you. Yes, you do need you. I think that that's the exact way to do it as a transfer down. My thing, I think for transfer, and my thought process on transfer ups has changed a lot recently because I have made some good friendships with agents, talked to them about how they make their business work, and I've had a lot more players get. I'm trying to figure out the proper way to say this, not PC, just proper. I've had a lot of players get robbed, I guess, in the portal or lied to, just not get what they promised.
Experiencing, you saw my content. I'm literally posting content about kids that have just been led completely astray in the portal, and they don't understand what it actually looks like to be recruited.
I've had players, like for one, I've had players think that they're getting recruited to these schools on these offer number amounts. It was so funny. I said, like, oh yeah, I'm getting recruited to these 3 schools at these offer amounts. And then I called the schools and they were like, nope, we filled that spot. Nope, we're filling that spot tomorrow. We might have some. And it's like, okay, so you went from 3 schools to 1 in about 30 minutes, man. Like, come on, let's slow it down.
Right.
And that's why I'm a big believer in having an agent, someone who is making those calls for you to go out there and find them. That's why I'm a believer in having an agent. Because I've had, another story for why I believe in agents. I had a player receive I heard about a player. He wasn't a player that worked with me, but I heard about him, who received 10% of the NIL that he was promised. That's a small amount. Yeah.
And again, no regulation right now. So how do you actually enforce that? It's crazy out there.
You can't, unless you have an agent who, one, people are scared of and has an iron tight contract and and all the stuff. You can't enforce it. That's why there's so much more value in having a real good agent. I know plenty. If anyone listening to this needs a recommendation on a real agent because you are transferring up, very important. If you are transferring up and need an agent recommendation, you can hit me. I'm happy to help out. I'm not an agent. I don't want to be an agent, but I'm happy to help out with that.
Quick interruption. I'm asking you this on the record. Do I have your permission to put your information in terms of your site and your site's email address in the podcast description so people can just look down and grab it?
First, you can put my personal email address in there because my website email has not been doing great.
Yes, dude, I had the same thing. People just started finding my cell phone number, and after a while of not getting business emails, I was like, yeah, my cell phone works. Here we go. I'm with you.
Yep, exactly. So I need to sort that out. So we're gonna give up my personal email because it's worth it. But yeah, if you're transferring up, and I'll send me your ESPN stats, and I'll tell you if you can transfer up. I'm happy to make some connections. Happy to help out because I think that having an agent throughout the transfer up process is so important because you need to, one, have someone that knows the market. You need to have someone who cares about your fit. And I think you need someone who is incentivized as much as you are to find the right school for you. And if you've got someone, and you and me are great. We're great, but we don't get paid when you get paid.
Right.
So as much as you've got kids, correct?
I have a child.
I listen when you speak. You got a kid. I'm 26. I have my own life. As much as I can care, I can't care as much as someone who legitimately would get paid for finding you a school. I'm not able to. There's just a level of incentivization that people, now that I'm old and I understand it, if the incentives line up, people are going to work harder. Find someone whose incentives line up with yours. Find an agent who wants the same things you do. Money, role, opportunity, all these things. So that's why I'm a big believer in having an agent. I think that there was a lot of agents that are really scummy and they make a really bad name for agents. You need to find someone who is big, has a massive network, has a ton, not 5, not 6, a ton of placements up to this point.
Track record.
Sure. Massive. Because there's so many people that will take 20% and do nothing. I had a player who found an agent on his own after he got in the portal, signed with this agent. The agent was supposed to take 20% of his contract. One, he sent me that contract. I'm like, this contract is garbage. Light this contract on fire. This is totally not legally enforceable. There's no piece of this that's legally enforceable. I brought it to a lawyer. The lawyer looked at it and said, what is this garbage you're showing me? So for one, even the agent can't take themselves seriously enough to hire a lawyer to write out a real contract. And then they're going to take 20% on your NIL. The agent didn't call any schools for him. All that happened is the player would get reached out, would receive recruitment from a school, and then send the agent to talk to them. The agent did nothing and wanted 20%. That's insane. I had a player work with an agent this year. The agent called about 100 schools for him, trying to find the right spot for him. Oh, now we found one. Now we found one that's paying him a bunch. It's great. A good agent is worth every penny in
working for you. Right.
You just need to find a good agent.
So, I mean, obviously the average listener is not going to have access to the, rundown that I sent you via email, but I'm willing to share this because you just hit on something that I feel, and I'm comfortable sharing this publicly. Having been a lifelong American citizen, I'm a little cynical about the way certain things in America work. I believe with every fiber of my being that right now, part of the reason why there is no actual legislation or guidance or quote unquote best practices for NIL and collectives and for the transfer portal is because the NCAA wants it to break. I believe that the NCAA thinks it's in their best interest to watch it go wrong and then 5 years from now swoop in and be like, see, we told you this wouldn't work. Now give us the power to enforce it our way. I think that the people that are paying for the total lack of regulation the most are current college athletes and current high school students. That's my take.
I don't want you
to put yourself out there and give that opinion. But what I do want to ask you is this. We are in a situation now where if a kid doesn't get as much information as they need, they can easily, way more easily than 5 or 6 years ago, put themselves in a horrible situation. Mm-hmm. To that kid who, you need to talk off the proverbial ledge right now, to that junior or senior in high school that is winding up to do the wrong thing. What's your elevator pitch to that kid to get him off the ledge?
You know what? I'm not gonna give an elevator pitch. I'm gonna just tell them because I don't have the time for that. What I would do is I would tell them exactly, here's what you need to know.
Let's hear it.
First things first is you need to find someone who has done this before. Okay? Your uncle is awesome. I love your uncle. He's very nice. Your uncle's a very nice guy. He loves you very much and he cares about you very much. He hasn't negotiated an NIL deal. He's half employed right now. He's probably not the person to trust with anything regarding your recruitment. As nice as he is, as much as he loves you, as much as he was a great basketball player in his own right. You know who is worth trusting? That AAU coach that has about 1,000 kids in college right now. 1,000 kids in college over the last 10 years. How about the other AAU coach that has 3 All-Americans? How about this other AAU program that has 8 teams, 1 on a shoe circuit, 1 on hoop group, on HGSL, 1 on another circuit, 1 on another circuit. All their players work really hard. All their players have high GPAs. All their players are high academic, and all their players go to top academic schools or get recruited to really good programs that fit their desires. Look at those people. They're probably not going to lie to you. Look, they might tell you that you're God's gift to earth to try to get you to play for their team. And to that, I would be honest with them when you walk in. I don't care if you think all I want is for you to think that I can play in college. If you think I'm a Division III player, that's fine. If you think I'm a Division II player, that's fine. If you think I'm an NAIA player, that's fine. If you don't think I'm a college player, let me go play for someone that thinks I'm a college player. But don't just go to the coach that says oh yeah, I'm a Division I, you're a Division I superstar, all that. Find somewhere that's going to actually push you. Find them and trust them. Listen to what they say. Find a reputable AAU program with a ton of history. Play for them. Listen to those people. Listen to people that have done it before. Find mentors that you can trust. Don't just rely on your uncle. Don't just rely on these randoms. That's why we talk about finding an agent with a huge track record, because they know what's going on. They've done this enough times. They can help you. And really, the only lying that they're going to do is saying, oh yeah, I'm sure we can get you. I'm sure you're a superstar. And then you're just all right. That's the worst lie that they're going to tell you. I know I said, that's the worst lie that they're going to tell you. So if you walk in there and you say, hey, I don't need you to say I'm God's gift to earth. I don't need you to say I'm a Division I superstar. Just tell me your honest opinion. One, they're going to coach you better. They're going to coach you harder. They're going to make you a better player. You're going to get better insight. You're going to get better guidance. You're going to get everything. And then they have no reason to lie to you. You've taken the lies off the table. You're set. You've now got mentors that can actually help you through these really weird and changing times in college recruitment.
A consistent thread that I've heard through a lot of your responses is the need for mentorship, seeking out experienced mentors. And what I'm hearing, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but kind of what I'm sort of hearing is on the men's side, especially, you're seeing the best mentorship in these established private leagues where the schools are real, where the prep schools are real, not basketball factories, but real prep schools with real mentorship. And if you're not in a situation where you can do that, then you have to align yourself with a club or AAU program that has experienced coaches that for sure know how to get you where you want to go. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, you are. And you know what? I'll add to it actually, because a lot of these pop-up programs are getting better and better because they're being ran by coaches that former Division I coaches that just want to retire to places like Florida. So You're getting a lot of I'll give the example of 212 Academy and Lakeview Basketball Academy, ran by Coach John Mahoney, former Michigan guy, and Coach Doug Leichner, former Maine guy. You've got Division I coaching at a pop-up prep. That's awesome. It's affordable. It's great. And you get a real mentor from that. Now, that's not to say it's anything compared to, I don't even think that they consider themselves a comparison to these NEPSAC schools, but you need to find mentors. You need people that have done this a bunch of times that can teach you what you're missing. Ignorance, what's the quote? You can either work through ignorance or you can pay through ignorance. Something like that. I'm definitely not getting this quote right. It's from Alex Hormozy, business guy. I think everyone that's in basketball needs to watch more business content, by the way, because there's really good business content out there, and a lot of it applies very directly to being a better basketball player, how you need to approach working on basketball, and all that stuff. I've been a big proponent of that. And
so funny that you just said that. My two favorite books on coaching are not books on coaching. They're books on leading organizational change in businesses.
I think that every coach needs to read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, a book from 1910 or something. Yeah. I'm reading this and I use these strategies when I talk to players about their game, and they'll play better. I've had players completely change their games, look like superstars after using 3 techniques from that book. It took me in a less than 30-minute conversation. I've completely changed how players played. Just from small techniques like that. I'm a big believer in a lot of business content applying to basketball. Where were we going with this? We got lost.
Well, you were talking about making sure you address your ignorance somehow.
Kind of where you have to address your ignorance somehow. Yeah. You can either find a mentor, you can find coaches, you can find people that, and it costs something to be on these good teams. It does. It costs something to be on a good strong AAU team. It costs something to be on a good strong prep school team, or you need to be an absolute monster. Right. There's no free lunch to get to a good prep school. If you're just all right, you know what? I've seen players that are ranked be paying for high school. Nate Ahmet is my number 1 player in the upcoming class. He's my current number 1 pick in the 2026 NBA draft. He pays to go to high school. Why shouldn't you? You think you can get away with not paying when literally the player that I think as a experienced NBA and NCAA evaluator who's done the draft, who's done all this stuff, who's got ties to all these NBA teams, who's helped out, whose opinion matters, thinks that Nate Ahmet is going to go number 1 in the draft. That guy pays for school. You think you don't have to? Excuse me? It's crazy. So you need to find a mentor somehow, and it might cost you something. That sucks. Unless you're a freak, unless you're a freak level athlete, freak level talent, it's definitely going to cost you something. It's tough. That's how life goes. Figure it out, because it's that, or you're going to just run through the ignorance yourself. You're going to have to make a ton of mistakes and learn on your own. By the time you are 17 of working through it entirely on your own, someone who is 15 is probably just as good as you, because they've been paying for the best trainers. Good trainers. They've been paying for the right teams. They've been on all these programs. They've been getting all this work. They've been getting mentors that taught them how to avoid the pitfalls that they will hit.
And by the way, that's not to say that path, choice B of not, paying your way, doesn't work. But that path looks an awful lot different right now with the transfer portal in the background.
You need to, if you're going to take that path, you need to be smart. You need to understand where you're going. You can't just go to the first prep school that you find. You need to find somewhere that actually cares about you and has value. You need to find, there's plenty of great free programs in the city. I'm not trying to dump on free programs in any way, shape, or form. But don't just go to the first free program you find where the coach is some guy that couldn't even make his college team, but he enjoyed training players. And it's like, dude, what's your deal? Like, you didn't play, you weren't a manager, you didn't play, you didn't coach anywhere. Now you're just coaching players. That's nice of you. Happy for the gym access. Find someone who's like, yeah, I have a coaching background, this many years at this school. I coached high school for 15 years. I coached Division II for this many years. I coached here, I coached there. I have some background. There's a reason. I'm doing this for free because I want to give back to people. Find those people. Don't find the people that are just doing it for free because they don't know how else to do it. You got to find the good people.
So my final question, which is my question for everybody.
You can keep going, by the way. I've got plenty of time. I have no hard stop.
You've covered everything. This has been great. My final question, you've actually already mostly covered. I already know, based on what you said, how you would address it, but I still want to share this figure with you just to get a agree or disagree. So I asked 50 college coaches how confident they were that the average high school kid they were recruiting actually understood the scope and magnitude of day-to-day being a college athlete. The average response from the 50 college coaches, and by the way, scholarship versus non-scholarship did not matter for this response. They all answered the same way, 3.5 out of 10. Are you
surprised? Very generous of them. Wow, that's very generous. 3.5, 3.5? I'd go even lower.
Most former players that I talked to told me the same thing. I can't believe it wasn't lower.
Yeah.
So especially given what we're talking about, you agree with that?
I'm also, I'm not a pessimist. I'm a strategic pessimist. I'm a pessimist when being a pessimist is the better option. Every other situation, I'm an optimist. I would rather be a pessimist on assuming how college ready my freshmen are going to be. Okay, one of them is going to wind up spending too much time with his girlfriend. Okay, one of them is going to wind up trying to party a little too much. Okay, like, I'm ready for this. That's just how it's going to go. Every one of them's going to do one thing that just makes no sense, is completely stupid, and they don't know why they're doing it. They're 18, 19, 20. They don't know what they're doing. They're kids. I'm 26 and I still do stupid stuff way too often. Okay? Like, it's how it works when you're young. Young people make mistakes. That's how they learn. You can't have a mentor teach you everything. That's just how life is. So 3.5 it's a nice figure. It actually makes me feel pretty good that these coaches, that they're finding that it's better than I would expect, which is very nice. And I guess it shows a lot for these young athletes. I'm curious if there's a peaks and valleys, if there's, you get 3 freshmen that are 10s and then 2 freshmen that are 0s.
And then it just kind of averages out. Yeah. Well, it's so funny you say that, because I actually think this is a great place to end given the conversation we've had. We've talked a lot about the mentorship piece, the learning piece, the understanding what this actually looks like. The one piece we didn't really account for is each coaching staff has a different risk threshold, right? So a lot of coaching staffs are willing to sort of address this shortfall by just grabbing the kids with the best motors and being like, I can, whatever you don't know, you've got an engine and we can teach you and you'll work through it. Versus sometimes they're passing on the most skilled kids if it looks, and I'm referencing back to what you said earlier, like the kid's confidence will wane and all of a sudden they'll stop doing the thing that they're good at.
And there's so many great philosophies that I've heard over how to recruit players. Some of it is we just want the absolute toughest guys, and we just want to be the toughest guys. We don't want anyone to want to come to play us. We'll figure out the skill thing later. We're just going to be absolutely tough as nails and make you never want to come play us. Some people are, there was a great conversation between Dan Hurley and Gino Auriemma from UConn head coaches talking about, I'm just going to get the best offensive players and we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out when they're here. There's another great quote from Dan Hurley where he talks about, we'll turn down A-level talent because we're concerned about other problems. We're concerned that they're not tough enough. We're concerned that they've got off-court issues. We're concerned that they're not ready to handle adversity. And really, I think being able to handle adversity, in my generation, because I'm still in this generation, I'll fight it. I'm still part of this generation. I'm not that old. My generation, we are really soft. We are not tough. We are not ready for adversity. And so being someone who's able to handle adversity is like doubling your points. If you are someone that can get knocked down and pick back, that gets knocked over and you can stood up every single time, you're going to do better. That matters so much for a lot of these college coaches. And look, there's just different philosophies of different programs, but in the end of the day, you're never going to regret being tougher. You're never going to regret learning to handle adversity, and you're never going to regret you're never going to regret working harder. That's the thing I've talked to a lot of players about. You're never going to regret working harder. You're never going to regret telling your coach that you can work harder. You're never going to regret telling your coach to coach you harder. It's good to build that skill. Everything's about 100%. Building skills. And I don't know why you would risk not building a skill.
We all need resilience. And I'm so happy I ended up asking you that last question because we got another reel. My Sylvester cat eyes went off again.
Awesome.
So aside
that's
from
less content I need to
learned,
post. You better double post with me. That's less content I need to make. Thank you.
Yeah. 100%. And aside from everything I learned and how good that conversation was, the biggest thing I take home is, the NCAA and the transfer portal and recruiting is going to get even messier, and you'll be a great person as long as you're open to it to have back to continue helping me unpack that mess in future seasons.
I would love to. Transfer portal's always changing. You know what? I just want to give one thing to the players right now while I'm here about the transfer portal. I think that the worst DMs that I consistently get are players telling me, oh, everything's so weird now with the transfer portal. Dude, the transfer portal has existed since, 2020 now? 2019?
Yeah.
Like the instant transfer portal? We're used to it now. We're used to it. How are you not? What do you mean it's weird because you're the transfer portal for you? Don't say that anymore. That's not an excuse anymore. Get with the times. You need to learn where you benefit from the transfer portal. And there are ways that high school players will benefit from the transfer portal. I think that there's a huge gap in the market for getting in at these low to mid majors, at these strong D2s, going to a junior college. And look, if you are a 3.5, 3.2 and above GPA player, make sure you're going to a junior college that has good academics. Or even just going, I had a player, I had a player, he's a friend of mine because I played with him in college at Brandeis University, who just Division III, who just transferred to Iona and had offers to other high-level schools. He's going to get paid NIL, where he's been paying to go to college for the last 4 years. Whatever level you go, if you are good enough, you will be found now. I have a Division II player who's transferring up right now, and he's going to get a very nice NIL bag. If you can play, you will be found now. That's the advantage of the transfer portal. So now you don't need to over worry. Oh, I need to go to Auburn to start my career. And even if it takes me 3 years to play, okay, I'll be good enough to play at Auburn. No, go somewhere where you'll be happy off the court. Go to somewhere where you'll get a good education. In case something goes wrong and you don't become the best basketball player, go somewhere you're going to be happy. I'm a big believer in D3. I'm a big believer in Patriot League. I'm a big high academic, big believer in going to somewhere high academic because it gives you a great floor for the rest of your life. You get a great education. You learn a lot. You get a very strong degree. You can go to grad school with that afterwards. And you need to have that backup in case. And now you can do that. You don't need to go to East Northwestern State in Wyoming because they're a mid-major Division I and they're the only mid-major offer you have and you want to play mid-major basketball. You can go to any school in the country now
and work your way up.
Work your way up. Go somewhere that actually fits who you are because you're going to play better basketball if you're happy. If you go somewhere that you fit in on campus, you're going to play better basketball. You're going to be happier. Everything's going to work out better for you.
I love it. John, I can't thank you enough. Stay here for 1 second. We'll talk after we wrap, but thank you so much. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you, Jared.
That's going to do it for another episode of the Nail the Recruiting Process podcast. For more information about my Nail the Recruiting Process project or the work that I do with individuals or teams, please visit www.nailtherecruitingprocess.com. If you have ideas for podcast guests, questions that you'd like to have answered on the show, or you just want to reach out and say hi, please feel free to email me anytime at recruitinggear@gmail.com. That's the word recruiting, the word gear, all one word, at gmail.com. Finally, follow me on social media at Nail the Recruiting Process on Instagram. That's my home base for all news, updates, and content. Take care, everybody. Thanks for listening.